I'm going to talk about how we've been using Amundsen at Devoted. We've been using it for, I don't know, a little over a year, maybe more than that now. Time has come to a standstill in my brain over the last year. So, but it's been a while. And so I'll start with who I am. I'm the manager of data engineering now at Devoted. Previously worked at DigitalOcean, Fitbit, Carbonite, and there's my GitHub and Twitter if you're interested in a boring follow. What's Devoted Health? We're a Medicare Advantage company. Our goal as a Medicare Advantage company is to provide insurance for all of our members, like they're members of our own family, and I think that's something that we take to heart. So we're a company with a mission. So why Amundsen? So we've discovered as our data platform emerged that we had more pipelines, more tables, we added more data scientists, and we had no single source of truth for documentation. Documentation was in database comments, protobuf comments, which is how our source tables are maintained. So developers would put in comments there, assuming they would get somewhere, everyone would know them, and they would just be in protobufs in the GitHub repo. And then Confluence pages, if a data scientist added a new data set, they would create a Confluence page for that, and it would sit there, sometimes maintained, sometimes not. The other issue we had was that we had no data lineage. So we had a bunch of DAGs. How were things connected? That was completely unknown to us. So there's something failed upstream or downstream. It would be a lot of tribal knowledge and how to understand what needed to be rerun, or if data was going to be delayed in certain cases. So we started looking for solutions, and the solution to me was a data catalog, a single source of truth for the data platform, kind of like what was just alluded to, making it searchable, shareable, things like that. I had previous experience at Fitbit with using Warehouse, which was a early precursor to LinkedIn's Data Hub, and started doing some research. And you can see on the right, there's a lot of options in this space right now. So we did a couple of light proof of concepts and investigation into different tools that were available, and settled on Amundsen because of part of it was because of things like this. The community exists, active Slack community used by some big players like Lyft, and that appealed to me. It reminded me of like early Airflow, where there was a lot of different workflow schedulers, and the community seemed to be coalescing around one tool. Also, the integrations that were already available. We use Snowflake, we use Airflow. That just kind of like was able to hook right into our ecosystem and work instantly. That it's in Python versus some of the other tools are in Java or languages that aren't necessarily what team data at Devoted uses, makes it so that we can contribute things. We understand how the data builder works. We don't have to go dust off Java 1 skills from 101 from college. Could just do what the data team's using. And the last thing is there was a Helm chart that was already there. So we use Kubernetes for all of our deployments. So it was easy to throw it up there and get it running and see what it looked like. We also contributed a little bit to the Helm chart and helped update it. So it was also a nice way to get introduced to the community. So I'm going to go through our deployment and then talk about the DVT lineage pieces that we're using, and then review kind of the impact that Amundsen's had for us. So like I mentioned, we're deploying on Kubernetes. We're using the official Helm chart, no real modifications or anything. And we're using the Neo4j backend. We are interested in the RDS piece that's come out just because that kind of fits better in the stack and experience that we have, but we haven't had any reason to try it yet. It's all managed via Terraform, so which deploys our Helm chart, creates our persistent storage, and manages all the vault access. So credentials for single sign-on and things like that all get managed via Terraform. We also have done some customization. We're using a very similar approach that Stemma has on their GitHub repo that I put at the bottom here. So it clones and builds the images in our CI steps. And it puts things like the OIDC plugin for single sign-on, so we use Google Auth, turning on table lineage, putting our custom logo at the top, so our stakeholders are impressed. And we have a custom action logger that I'll talk about a little bit that allows us to track usage and understand how people are using Amundsen, which helps justify the argument to make further investments in the tool and just that it's actually being used. So our metadata that gets populated is through a single Airflow job that using the data builders. And I'll walk through that real quick. On the left here is our leftmost is the Snowflake metadata job. So that's going and pulling all of the descriptions that get populated in our Snowflake database, all the columns and table metadata that flows right in. We also have these jobs that pull in the source descriptions and populate static source descriptions in Amundsen, so that we have the edit functionality if people want to change things, but the single source of truth is maintained by our database and our DVT schema files. So that it has kind of both. We also have the new DVT lineage job, which parses our DVT manifest, and that goes and will populate the data lineage. And we also are using the Snowflake query history to get query usage and use table usage by user. So to display the most popular tables in our database and which users are using what. So our end users could say, hey, I have a question about this. I should go talk to not me, but someone else, because that's the person who's actually been using it. So that's a super high level of how we're deploying and using Amundsen. So I think that one of the more exciting things that we've been doing lately is this DVT integration. So this was all done by the Stemma team, so huge thanks to them. And so what it does is parses the DVT manifest JSON and catalog JSON files. And how we do that is we compile those and push into S3 anytime any DVT changes are made in our system, so that the latest versions are always there when the data builder job goes to run. It can pull those in and do the parsing independent of anything else that's happening in our system. And then from there, it loads the table lineage into the Amundsen table lineage model, which you have to set via the customization in the front end. And that's basically it. It's very similar to the other extractors. It just kind of works, and it worked well with our tool, our DVT installation, which is about 865 models, something like that. I looked at this morning. So it's relatively decent size, still parses pretty quick. And this is an example of what you get right out of the box is upstream, downstream. So you can see all the tables that are upstream and downstream in a table display here. So for this one, dim dates, it depends on dim holidays in our DVT model, relatively simple one. And downstream is used in 35 different tables. So you can see all that right here and see if dim dates breaks or has some bad data. We know that these 35 tables could be impacted. Typically, we have data tests so that the bad data wouldn't get in, but this could give someone insight into what kind of impact they'd be making if they made a change. Additionally, you see that badge right there, dim at the top, that is put in by the DVT extractor. So that's coming from our DVT tags automatically, which again allows like a single source of truth to form around this, where the DVT YAML schema YAML gets put into the database comments and also put into Amundsen. The other thing that we just turned on is the graph lineage, which is really cool. And sometimes it gets like with the ones that have like 35 tables, it could get a little chaotic, but this is a relatively straightforward one where we're using our a metadata table here about Snowflake warehouse usage, and it's all done in DVT. And so like all of this just is happening based on us using DVT and us using Amundsen. No like changes to our workflow to get this, which was really nice. And the visual is awesome. you can get this from your DVT docs, but then you have 2 different sites that you want people to go to, which is a big reason that we put it into here. Also, our DVT docs is a static site that gets extremely slow as you add more models. So now that we're at like 800 models, it can be painful to load it up. Having it all here and searchable is super useful, I think. So is this thing on? So we put out Amundsen, and was anyone using it? One experience I had in the past was with Warehouse, and we found that we loved it, thought it was like the perfect solution, and we couldn't get people to use it or buy in. And so we wanted to make sure that that wasn't happening here before we tried to invest more in it. So we took advantage of the action logger that exists and created a custom action logger that just, anytime someone does something in Amundsen, it logs automatically to a Kinesis fire hose, dumps that in S3, and Snowpipe loads it to Snowflake. So we're using all of the data tools that we use to analyze our own tool. And it was, this is makes it look much more complicated than it is. It was like a simple Terraform module that we threw out there, and a function that replaced the action logger. So not anything significant, and we got a lot of great data off of this. So we have this dashboard that we see every day now, that what our daily active users are, what search terms are, who the most active user. You can see one person is just out of control, loves it. We look at that pretty regularly, and we can see things like some of the trends are that, like, a lot of the newer users, new data scientists in the company really love using the tool for a certain period of time, and then once they understand the data sets, they've fallen off. But now with the new data lineage pieces in, I think that's become more of a consistent place where people just keep going and keep using it. And it's and our daily active users have you can see this is only a couple weeks, but it's been increasing over time, and even some people on the weekends, which is, I guess, whatever floats your boat. So this is a Looker dashboard that we created right off of that model, which was, again, very useful for me understanding how people are using the tool and if they're using it. It turns out it's a big success. So as part of this, I went and talked to some of the different end users. And this is just some direct quotes from our data scientist, data analyst, and a software engineer. And they've found it to be really, really useful, especially for onboarding and learning all the different data sets. We have something like 4,000 source tables and that get loaded into our Snowflake database. So if you're new, it could be very daunting, and what's there and how it's being used. And the data lineage piece is really made that easy to understand, like, hey, I'm going to be touching this. Where is this going to be impacted downstream? One of my favorite ones was the one of our software engineers who said they hadn't written much SQL in their career before joining, and really just were able to learn all about our data and understand what people were talking about. And I thought that was super useful to get that, like, hey, like, people are using this for that type of to get that type of context, which isn't necessarily something I would have even thought. I thought it'd be mostly used for just understanding, like, how to write the next query, rather than, hey, what is even happening in this meeting. So yeah, it's been a big success for us there. Future work. So I showed the table lineage. We're going to be working, try to get column lineage. We have an internal query parser that we use for to parse our DBT queries right now for understanding, like, whether upstream tables are deprecated or not and things like that. And I think we're going to be able to use that to be able to populate the column level lineage. If that works, we'll probably try to open source that, but that's coming soon. We recently migrated to Looker, which is where that dashboard is. And I think with Looker, we should be able to get our dashboards cataloged in here, which is something we couldn't do with Periscope because they didn't have an API, and that was our previous BI vendor. So we're excited to see that and just further make this a one-stop shop for all of our metadata and data catalog needs. Any questions? And we are hiring. We're looking for a lead analytics engineer and a data engineer to join my team. So if you're interested in any of this and want to work on it, let me know.
This is great, Adam. Thank you. If you folks have questions, please raise your hand. I don't think we have to make any guesses on what Adam's favorite TV show is.
Went with a theme.
Yeah. I'll ask the question while folks raise their hands. You had mentioned in one time you had some use case around reports that were tagged as compliance and managing change management on upstream data that may impact those. I was hoping if you could share some more insight into that use case.
Yeah, so we are taking advantage of the tags and have plans to do that more, to be able to say that this is a PII or PHI field or column, and use that as a driver to set security compliance. Things like right now we started using the dynamic data masking, and that is generated off of our data protos, but getting that to be the single source of truth, Amundsen to be the single source of truth for that, so people could just tag automatically rather than have to depend on being able to write code, is something we're working on. We haven't gotten that fully baked yet, but you know, I think there's a blog post out there from Square where they talk about their PII, PHI, I guess it's just PII for them, usage, and how they've been able to drive that compliance. And that's an inspiration for us. And we're not fully there yet, but that's something we're working towards.
Cool, thank you. Other questions for Adam?
Hey, Mark, I have one.
Please.
Hey, great presentation, Adam. Thanks for sharing. Also in the healthcare industry, but the I guess, how did this impact or drive changes to your governance, like your data governance? You know, did it, because I know we have like really big teams that are data stewards and all that kind of stuff. I guess, how did that change that aspect of your operation?
I guess like one thing is that we're going to try to take more advantage of the tagging and that PII piece I just talked about. As far as like descriptions and putting in better descriptions, I think that has become something that people are interested in doing and seeing the rewards of doing it versus not having that before. And then I think from a governance perspective, we're not necessarily setting the ownership and things like that yet, but like I think that's something we'll probably do in the near future. We're a relatively small team still, 3 data engineers and I don't know, 12 data scientists, something like that. So as we add more data people, I think we'll do more of that and take advantage of some of the stuff that was shown in the previous presentation.
Thanks.
Yeah, it also is interesting to me that you folks have the approach of, I'm gonna enforce it at the source. So you've got your protobuf stuff for the source tables and your DBT stuff for the derived tables, and you are getting a lot of information from there directly, instead of after the fact having a governance team go around and get those descriptions and tags in. So that's a very, very good way to do it.
Yeah, I should say that like one of the downfalls to warehouse at Fitbit, I thought, was that we put out the tool and we're like, all right, populate your descriptions. And it was like, well, if I got to populate all the descriptions, I'm not going to use this. But we didn't really know what the descriptions were. We were the data infrastructure team. Versus here, we're getting these from the source, from data scientists, putting them into DVT, or the developers writing the protobuf. So it's like, you know, everyone's kind of incentivized and doesn't have to do much from their workflow to get it in there. It's just keep doing your normal job.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam. Appreciate your presentation. It was really good. And in interest of time, we're going to move to the next speaker. And if you have any other questions for Adam, please hit him on the Slack.